Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming. I appreciate you all, and I can see your comments, guys, from different parts of the world. It really fills my heart, and I really feel happy for what I'm doing, and especially that I'm presenting such live streamings to hundreds of people per day and thousands of people when you count them after 24 hours. So it's a really great honor for me to be someone who is presenting quality news and quality analysis to you. I really appreciate your trust, guys. And for the haters for writing all these comments, I think it's sometimes we say the dogs bark and the caravans, they are still moving. So I truly believe that your comments doesn't add anything to my life and doesn't even bother me and doesn't even stop me from doing what I do. In the contrary, if it does something, it only makes me more encouraged and emboldened to continue what I do, because it creates the impression in me that what I'm doing is correct, and I know that what I'm doing is correct. In this video, guys, we're going to speak about this famous interview that Tucker Carlson is going to publish tomorrow on Thursday on his personal website and also on X, formerly known as Twitter. And we will address the accusations against him that he is a traitor. And at the same time, the same journalists who say that he is a traitor for interviewing Putin, they say also that they applied for an interview with Putin and their requests were rejected. And I'm going to explain to you why. If between brackets, guys, if I was a press advisor for Putin and I received 2 interview requests, one of them and the other one is from Christiane Amanpour, why I would personally advise President Putin, if I was able to advise him, to accept Tucker Carlson's and not Christiane Amanpour's, and how that this interview could bring Tucker Carlson under sanctions, European sanctions, and a ban to enter the European Union. And this is being confirmed today by the Newsweek. And lastly, I'm going to check if President Biden is capable of doing 2 hours interview with a Russian journalist, and can he really handle a long interview? Can he really express his opinions correctly? Or the man is finished and he can barely read some teleprompters. So to begin this episode, for us to know what Tucker Carlson said to his critics and what video statement he posted on his X account, I'm going to play his statement. It's a 4-minute statement that he posted on his personal account to see what he has to say from Moscow.
We're in Moscow tonight. We're here to interview the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin. We'll be doing that soon. There are risks to conducting an interview like this, obviously, so we've thought about it carefully over many months. Here's why we're doing it. First, because it's our job. We're in journalism. Our duty is to inform people. 2 years into a war that's reshaping the entire world, most Americans are not informed. They have no real idea what's happening in this region, here in Russia or 600 miles away in Ukraine. But they should know. They're paying for much of it in ways they might not fully yet perceive. The war in Ukraine is a human disaster. It's left hundreds of thousands of people dead, an entire generation of young Ukrainians, and it's depopulated the largest country in Europe. But the long-term effects are even more profound. This war has utterly reshaped the global military and trade alliances, and the sanctions that followed have as well. And in total, they have upended the world economy. The post-World War II economic order, the system that guaranteed prosperity in the West for more than 80 years, is coming apart very fast, and along with it, the dominance of the US dollar. These are not small changes. They are history-altering developments. They will define the lives of our grandchildren. Most of the world understands this perfectly well. They can see it. Ask anyone in Asia or the Middle East what the future looks like. And yet the populations of the English-speaking countries seem mostly unaware. They think that as nothing has really changed. And they think that because no one has told them the truth. Their media outlets are corrupt. They lie to their readers and viewers. And they do that mostly by omission. For example, since the day the war in Ukraine began, American media outlets have spoken to scores of people from Ukraine, and they've done scores of interviews with Ukrainian President Zelensky. We ourselves have put in a request for an interview with Zelensky, and we hope he accepts. But the interviews he's already done in the United States are not traditional interviews. They are fawning pep sessions specifically designed to amplify Zelensky's demand that the U.S. enter more deeply into a war in Eastern Europe and pay for it. That is not journalism. It is government propaganda. Propaganda of the ugliest kind, the kind that kills people. At the same time, our politicians and media outlets have been doing this, promoting a foreign leader like he's a new consumer brand. Not a single Western journalist has bothered to interview the president of the other country involved in this conflict, Vladimir Putin. Most Americans have no idea why Putin invaded Ukraine or what his goals are now. They've never heard his voice. That's wrong. Americans have a right to know all they can about a war they're implicated in, and we have the right to tell them about it because we are Americans too. Freedom of speech is our birthright. We were born with the right to say what we believe. That right cannot be taken away no matter who is in the White House. But they're trying anyway. Almost 3 years ago, the Biden administration illegally spied on our text messages and then leaked the contents to their servants in the news media. They did this in order to stop a Putin interview that we were planning. Last month, we're pretty certain they did exactly the same thing once again. But this time, we came to Moscow anyway. We are not here because we love Vladimir Putin. We are here because we love the United States, and we want it to remain prosperous and free. We paid for this trip ourselves. We took no money from any government or group, nor are we charging people to see the interview. It is not behind a paywall. Anyone can watch the entire thing, shot live to tape and unedited, on our website, tuckercarlson.com. Elon Musk, to his great credit, has promised not to suppress or block this interview once we post it on his platform, X, and we're grateful for that. Western governments, by contrast, will certainly do their best to censor this video on other less principled platforms because that's what they do. They are afraid of information they can't control. But you have no reason to be afraid of it. We are not encouraging you to agree with what Putin may say in this interview, but we are urging you to watch it. You should know as much as you can. And then, like a free citizen and not a slave, you can decide for yourself. Thanks.
So, to be honest with you, I am not on the side of Russia. I'm not on the side of Ukraine. I do not cheer for Putin. I do not cheer for Zelensky. But I have watched long format interviews for President Putin, for example, with Oliver Stone, because it was a great opportunity for me to learn about the personality of this leader who is leading the biggest country in the world and trying to reshape the international system from unipolarity to multipolarity. And the Russian role is, you cannot underestimate it, and you cannot really ignore it. And you can see that with the start of the hot war in Ukraine in 2022, there was a serious attempt by the United States to bring all the European countries as one bloc against Russia in order to foil the Russian mission in Ukraine and in order to break or create a quagmire for Russia in Ukraine, similar to what they have done in Afghanistan in the 80s. And since then, they think that Russia should stay a regional power after the disintegration of the Soviet Union. They do want for Russia to become a superpower. I'm a promoter for a multipolar world, which means that I want for the United States to be one of the poles and one of the strong superpowers. And at the same time, I want other superpowers to take their responsibilities and play an instrumental role in shaping the livelihood of the global citizens. This is my opinion. I'm not cheering for Putin. I'm watching his long format interviews. I'm also watching the long format interviews of Zelensky. And personally, this is my conviction after watching the interviews, that I don't think Zelensky is in charge. And I don't think that Ukraine is a sovereign, independent country. I think that Ukraine is being used as an instrument against Russia, and Zelensky is the middleman between NATO and Ukraine. And he has sacrificed a lot from his people for the sake of NATO and not for the sake of the Ukrainian people, because the Ukrainian people's interests as a neighboring country to Russia is to have friendly relationship with Russia, is to do business with Russia, and also to prosper together with Russia. If I'm a leader of Ukraine, I would like to seek good relationship in between Ukraine and Russia, between Ukraine and Hungary, between Ukraine and Poland, and between Ukraine and the rest of the European countries, and also the beyond that, right, with the United States, with the UK, etc. I do not want to make my country a puppet or an instrument as a pawn for any side, not for Russia, neither for Russia, nor for the United States. And I think the former president of Ukraine in 2014, he tried to do that. He wanted to stay in the middle, and this was a taboo that the Americans and the Brits and the Europeans didn't accept. They wanted for Ukraine to be a pawn against Russia. That is why this is the ground that I stand on when I criticize Ukraine or when I criticize Zelensky. Therefore, I believe that Tucker Carlson has all the right to go to Russia and amplify the voice of the official line of Russia to ask him, why did you invade Ukraine? Because if you turn on your TV and if you watch to MSNBC, if you watch CNN, they will tell you, also Fox News, that he, a crazy person, the Hitler of the 21st century, he woke up and he just wants to expand, occupy, and he's coming after all Western governments and all Western states, and he's after our life, what do they say? Our way of life, our values, our freedoms. What kind of freedom is this if you don't accept the other side of the story, right? And to begin with, here, Tucker Carlson nowadays is in Russia, and you can see the backlash that happened, right? And they are trying to sanction him. So I am for interviewing Putin, and I'm for interviewing Zelensky, I'm for interviewing Biden. And I'm very happy that journalist Michael Tracy, he published this brilliant article today in support of Tucker Carlson's interview. He says, of course, journalists should interview Vladimir Putin. And I just summarized this very quickly for you guys. He says, a top Russian official remarked that relations with the United States were at a lower point than any time since the founding of the Soviet Union. Even basic diplomatic communications between the two governments had become negligible to non-existent. So in his opinion, obstacles to normal US-Russia engagement only heighten the obligation for any respectable journalist, if presented with the opportunity, to interview Russian President Vladimir Putin without a second thought. Can anyone imagine Joe Biden sitting for an interview with Russian journalists for any length of time at all? Even before relations dived post-invasion, he barely does interviews in the United States. I will show you a video now for Biden, just for you to see very quickly. If you really think that Biden can give interview for 2 hours in his current situation, and this is a video that was posted yesterday, and it's very hilarious to see. This was by David Smith. He says he's fine. I mean, check Biden's.
There is some movement, and I don't want to. Well, maybe choose my words. There's some movement. There's been a response from there's been a response from the opposition, but yes, I'm sorry, from Hamas, but it seems to be a little over the top. We're not sure where it is. There's a continuing negotiation right now.
I mean, the guy is finished, right? And he is not able even to formulate basic opinions and basic sentences when it comes to the current hot topics that we are encountering every day. I mean, I just saw a video of him today on his personal account, and you can see clearly that the guy is just reading a teleprompter, right? And he's encouraging the people, encouraging the POTUS. I wanted to search for his, President Biden, encouraging the Republicans and the Democrats to get over their differences and accept his package of aid to, this is the video, guys. Like, look, this guy, he can only read teleprompters. He can't do anything else.
Folks, we've got to move past this toxic politics. It's time to stop playing games with the world waiting and watching. And by the way, the world is waiting. The world is watching. They are waiting and watching what we're going to do. We can't continue to let petty partisan politics get in the way of our responsibility. We're a great nation. It's not acting like a great nation. So I'm calling on Congress to pass this bill. Get it to my desk immediately.
I mean, you see clearly, right, the difference between someone like Putin and someone like President Biden. I mean, if you put now these two men in one room to negotiate on ending the Ukraine war, Biden cannot be alone, right? He needs his advisors. He needs someone to guide him what's happening. I don't think he knows the details of what's happening in Ukraine. And I think he doesn't know what is planned for Ukraine. The guy lost his ability to think and be a leader, unfortunately. So it's tediously, unbearably stupid for anyone to suggest that Carlson, simply by virtue of going to Russia with the intent of interviewing Putin, should therefore be assumed guilty of treason, probably the most overused smear in the present American political lexicon. As we speak, Congress is lurching toward eventual passage of the largest disbursement of U.S. military aid since the beginning of the war, justified by the endlessly recycled premise that if Putin is not defeated in Ukraine, he is sure to rampage through the rest of Europe, fulfilling his destiny as the latter-day incarnation of Hitler. Isn't it about time someone journalistically scrutinizes that proposition by going directly to the source? Over the last 2 years, the US media has overflowed with cheap war punditry purporting to divine what's going on inside Putin's head or what he really wants. Now, ironically, many of those same pundits will throb with fury that a journalist has finally done something other than uselessly speculate. And since the Ukraine war, by the way, that I followed it closely, not the little, let's say, military particulars or the details on the ground, but geopolitically, I educated myself to know why all this is happening in Ukraine. And when I compared what I know to the knowledge of the pundits who appear on TV to give us a perspective why this war is happening, I get the impression that they purposely, deliberately do not misinform their people or hide the complexity and the geopolitical context of this conflict in Ukraine because they don't want their people to be educated, they don't want their people to be informed, and by doing so, it's easy to play with the public opinion. Because in the United States, they believe that with less smart ideas or less smart approaches, they are able to manipulate the people to vote for a certain candidate. They want to use the illiteracy among the American people about global politics to pursue certain political interests inside their nation. So they want to keep them illiterate about so many cases. And I'm not generalizing all the American people, but the politicians, they try to keep their people illiterate about political affairs. And if you compare, I have this experience with, like when I meet someone Russian or Syrian or Serbian or Chinese, for example, you see that lots of people from these countries are interested in global politics. Like they are not passive, they're active. Unfortunately speaking, I'm just speaking about my personal experience now, and this is only subjective, right? That my personal experience with lots of Americans, beyond the faculties that I studied, beyond the walls of the universities that I visited, they are not really aware of what's happening around the world, including my family members, and I have family in the United States, from my mother's side, they live in California, they live in Los Angeles, they live in Orange County and different Boston, in different places. They have no clue what's happening outside of the United States, maybe outside of their own cities and their own towns. This is just my opinion about it. Guys, before we continue this live streaming, I would like to thank James for his generous support. Thank you so much, James. Really, I appreciate it. And if you guys want to support my work, I would really appreciate it if you just hit the like button, thumbs up, so that this video would get more attraction. So, we have now Christiane Amanpour. She posted this on her personal X account, and she says, does Tucker really think we journalists, we guys, she identifies herself as a journalist, right? We journalists have been trying to interview President Putin every day since his full-scale invasion of Ukraine. It's absurd. We will continue to ask for an interview just as we have for years now. Look, this tweet or post, it has already a factual mistake. Like, this was never a full-scale invasion. It was an invasion, but it was never a full-scale invasion. This was a special military operation. A full-scale invasion means that Russia would deploy all its troops, including the reservists, to Ukraine and wage an all-out war. But the Russians were clear from day one that this was a special military operation in particular areas in Ukraine. And once they invaded Ukraine, remember, in the first 2 weeks, they said they are ready for negotiations, and they negotiated for peace. And the Ukrainian side and the Russian side met for peace negotiations, right, between the both sides, that Boris Johnson and the UK tarnished later. So if this was a full-scale invasion, the Russians would not have been open even for negotiations. Remember that. And secondly, the full-scale invasion, now you can see clearly with your eyes, guys, what does it mean in the Gaza Strip? And what does it mean to carpet bomb a country through or an area through an all-out war or a full-scale invasion? But these people have really no shame at all. And if you have this opinion, why would I, as president of a country like Russia, would grant you the chance to come and ask me questions if I'm not able to explain my point of view, right? I mean, what's the purpose of this interview? If I'm Putin, the advisor of Putin, I'm Putin, I want to give an interview, I want to have the chance to explain. So I want to have at least a journalist who lets me speak. But if you invite Christiane Amanpour, who is going to say this was a full-scale invasion and she's going to draw parallels between him and Hitler, then it's pointless, because the people of the world, the citizens of the world, especially in the Western countries, they deserve to listen to Putin unedited, right? Like, let him speak, like Oliver Stone did with him. And I replied to Christiane Amanpour, and this is one of the reasons why I think she shouldn't have been granted an interview anyways. And this is her with President Bashar al-Assad in 2005. And this is her in Damascus asking the worst question that you can come up, right? And I said, because you have a track record of not really doing journalism, but rather delivering threatening message to foreign leaders from the American deep state. Take a look what she asked President Bashar al-Assad. This is from 2005, guys, not 2011, not 2023, 2024.
Mr. President, you know the rhetoric of regime change is headed towards you from the United States. They are actively looking for a new Syrian leader. They're granting visas and visits to Syrian opposition politicians. They're talking about isolating you diplomatically and perhaps a coup d'etat or your regime crumbling. What are you thinking about that?
I feel very confident for one reason, because I was made in Syria. I wasn't made in the United States, so I'm not worried. This is Syrian decision should be made by the Syrian people, nobody else in this world. So we don't discuss it in Syria.
What would happen, do you think, if there was an alternative to you? Who is the alternative to you?
Could be any Syrian, any national Syria, and we have a lot. I'm not the only person who is eligible to be president. We have a lot of Syrians, so we don't have any problem about that. But no Syrian would be allowed to be president if he's made anywhere outside our borders. This is a Syrian principle.
So nobody is allowed to become a president of Syria if he is made outside of the borders of Syria. And the Syrians are very sensitive about this because they have a bad experience with the US since the 50s. When the Americans engineered a coup in Syria and they brought someone called Hosni Zaim, and Hosni Zaim even killed one of the Syrian intellectuals, Anton Saadeh, and he tried to bring Syria on the American track. So Syrians do not really have a positive, let's say, interaction with the Americans, unfortunately. So many times Americans try to coup d'etat and regime change in Syria since the 50s. So it's a very sensitive thing. So if I'm the president of Syria and Christiane Amanpour is asking me this question, I know highly confident that somebody in the United States, whether it's in the CIA, whether it's in the Pentagon, whether it's in the American administration in 2005, in the George Bush administration, somebody told Christiane Amanpour to go and tell President Bashar that it's your turn now. We overthrew Saddam Hussein, and now the rhetoric of regime change war is headed towards you. What do you say about that, you know? This is not journalism. You are a messenger and bringing a threatening message from your government to a foreign leader. Why would I, as if now a leader of Russia, grant you interview when you have this track record, right? And it's never ending. I will show you now another video of Christiane Amanpour, this time with Lavrov, and she showed him a picture of a boy called Amran Daknish from Aleppo, where I come from personally, guys. And I will tell you the full story of this. Let's take a look first what she asked.
Mr. Lavrov, I want to show you this picture.
Sure.
This went viral in August. This is a little boy. He's got a name. It's called Omran Daknish. He's 5 years old. This is not a terrorist. This is a boy who is surrounded in besieged and bombarded Aleppo. What do you say to the civilians who are simply asking for the right to not be bombed? That is a war crime, sir.
It's really a tragedy, and they must insist that the moderates who want to protect them, they must separate themselves from Nusra.
So,
Mr. Lavrov, I want to show you this picture.
So this is the picture that she showed him, right? And it has a long story behind him. And she tried to embarrass him with this photo. And this is an interview of Eva Bartlett, my friend and colleague. This is the guy, by the way, that you saw him in this picture, right? And this is the father. And Eva Bartlett, she interviewed them when this incident happened in Aleppo. And we learned after that this photo came, the source of the video footage showing Amran being put in the ambulance was the Aleppo Media Center, which is funded by the West and promotes the rebel opposition narrative in Syria, relying on Al-Qaeda sources. The journalists who took the video and photos are embedded in Al-Qaeda controlled areas. The guy who took the photo, his name is Mahmoud Raslan, the photographer responsible for the viral photo of Amran, is known to be close to terrorists of Nuruddin Az-Zinki faction, who are most widely known for their methodic beheading of Palestinian child Abdullah Isa in July 2016. After Isa's slaughter, photos emerged of grinning Raslan taking a selfie with some of the Az-Zinki murderers. This is the guy who took the photo, by the way. Those are the Zinki guys. And this guy's beheaded a 14-year-old Palestinian boy. And this is the guy in the picture that the CNN and the others used it for propaganda reasons. And his father says that there were no Air Force at the moment of the bombing. And the White Helmets, which is again funded by the Brits, by the United States, by the Germans, by the French, by Qatar, all these countries, they came to the place where there was destruction, and they took his brother, this small kid's brother, first to take him for photo shooting. And when they saw that he is not really injured and there's no blood on his face, they put him back and they took the other baby, the other guy, Amran, this time, to put him in an ambulance for photo shooting, right? And this was story. This story was told by the father of this boy. If I'm a CNN journalist and I'm using this photo to condemn my opponent, and later there is a story that comes and debunks the story that I presented, and if I don't correct my story, then I'm deliberately doing propaganda, right? Because as a journalist myself, I have done mistakes. I have misreported. I have sometimes wrote something that later turned out not to be true, but you either retract the story and publish a correction or apologize, right? They have not done that. So means that they deliberately did this propaganda by a photographer who works for them. Because remember, the CNN hired Al-Qaeda operatives in Aleppo and collaborated with them for propaganda work to promote for the regime change war, right? And this is something that we, the people in Aleppo, we know firsthand. And this is another video of the CNN journalist, another CNN journalist. Look how she reacts. I just blurred the pictures here because I think YouTube will now delete this video or demonetize it if they see that I'm using the photo that has a little bit of injuries in it. So take a look how the CNN anchor sheds crocodile tears now about this injured boy. Now we can see in the Gaza Strip, thousands of babies are dying and being killed and murdered, and none of them has bothered to shed tears.
Today, the United Nations is asking for 48 hours of relief in the fighting, a break from the violence between the government regime and rebel forces. In 5 years of war, more than 250,000 people have lost their lives. That includes 4,500 children in Aleppo alone. Millions more displaced without a home. Now that includes Omran. And what strikes me is we shed tears, but there are no tears here. He doesn't cry once. That little boy is in total shock. He's stunned inside his home one moment and the next, lost in the flurry and the fury of war and chaos. At least 3 people were killed by this bomb in this neighborhood. This is Omran. He's alive. We wanted you to know.
You see, where are her tears now for the babies getting killed every day in the Gaza Strip? Right? I can see that some of you already remember this. And we know in Syria how the CNN, MSNBC, the BBC, the Channel 4, so many outlets, guys. If the sky is blue today, they say it's raining. It's like the opposite of what's happening there. That's why this has encouraged me to become also a journalist in English language. Some people ask me, why are you posting in English? You live in Germany, speak to the German people, or to in Arabic or in Armenian, etc. No, I want to speak in English because most of these media outlets that are influential and they spread such fakes about my country and other countries, and they cause death and destruction and misery. I want to counter that. I'm not doing propaganda. I'm not doing counter propaganda. I'm debunking their propaganda. And this is a question that I received when I first came to Germany in early 2016 from a German magazine. And they asked me, why are you posting videos, or what are you doing in this regard, etc. And I said, the Western mainstream media is institutionally is corrupted. And I've seen with my own eyes in Syria how they fabricate stories and they distort the information. Therefore, I want to counter the propaganda. And I said, somebody has to counter this propaganda. And do you know what they wrote in the article? They wrote and they said that I said that somebody has to do counter propaganda. I said somebody has to counter the propaganda, but they wrote about me that I said that somebody has to do counter propaganda. You see, this is how the media lies. And that's why I have zero trust in the mainstream media. And I take everything they say with a grain of salt. And I know that I would have in 9 out of 10 times, if I stand on the opposite side of what the mainstream media is claiming and reporting, I have the 90% chance, 9 out of 10 times to be correct. So I have a first-hand experience with them. Like in Aleppo, there was in 2012, there was the opposition prepared for a big anti-Assad protests. So I went to this place to see what's happening, to report about it. And before I go there, a CNN reporter, which I met her in Damascus, she asked me to report her what happened. She was in Damascus, but she didn't bother to come to Aleppo. She asked me what happened in Aleppo. So I'm going to tell you what happened. I went to this place and I found the number of the people who were protesting were around 30 to 40 people, and they were carrying like banners with cartons. And they were walking in the streets in old Aleppo neighborhoods, and they were asking the people to join the protest. And the people were not joining the protest. People were just moving with their lives and just acting like nothing is happening. So they got irritated because they were calling for the people in the street who were just bypassers to join them, and they didn't join. They asked for the shop owners and those who work in the shops to join them, and they didn't join them. So they were really mad. So because I told you they were carrying these banners, right, the carton with sticks. So when they got angry, they went to the shops and they started hitting the front windows of the shops, telling them that they are traitors for not joining the revolution, quote unquote. And I can hear them and I can see them, like they were saying "Ya hayf" in Arabic. It's like shame on you, like you're not joining our revolution. And the people were not interested. So what happened is that when they started hitting the front windows of the shops, the shop owners or the workers who work in the shops, they got really angry because they started breaking the windows. And a few people went out with their own sticks and they started hitting them and they beat their asses up. Like I saw it. There was a fight between just normal people. So I reported what I saw to the CNN reporter in Damascus. And at night, when she published the article, she said that an anti-Assad protesters were peacefully demonstrating and calling for freedom, democracy, blah, blah, blah. And then she said, quote, government thugs, shabihas, it's called in Arabic, shabihas, government thugs, they broke into the demonstration and they started beating them and they ended the demonstration. This is what those people who engaged in the fight were just normal people. And she just created and made up a story because they don't want to tell that, they didn't want to say that the people in Aleppo or ordinary people were not interested to join into this so-called revolution. They didn't want to do it in 2012, mid-2012. They forced the city to the fight by invading the city with MK-47s, with the four-wheel trucks, which came all from Turkey, and they invaded the city and they occupied half the city. And between July 2012 to December 2016, half the city was occupied by the so-called rebels, which later developed into Jabhat al-Nusra, which is Al-Qaeda offshoot in Syria. And these people killed over 13,000 Aleppi civilians with their hell cannons, with their rockets and everything, something that nobody, I'm sure, reported in the mainstream media because the blood of the people which died from our side it's not worth reporting about it, right? I had the family there. I had friends there. We have our friend. I still remember him very well. He was a dear friend. His name is Viken. He was Armenian. And the first terrorist attack that happened in Aleppo with the car bomb, and they blew up in an area by the so-called democratic rebels, he died. He got murdered by them, right? So we know what happened there, and we know how the CNN lied. That's why I know I'm highly confident that these people lie as a profession, right? So if you want to be a rich liar, you go to these mainstream media outlets. But if you want to be an honorable person, you need to counter these powerful people and their psychopathic plans and projects for killing hundreds of thousands and millions of people and just stepping over them and smashing them like they are insects, because they see them as insects. Like you saw what Friedman in the New York Times wrote the other day. He compared the Iranians to wasps, right? And this is how they see us in the Middle East. And this is how, when 1 million people dies in Iraq and then 500,000 dies in Syria, etc., it's nothing for them. So that's why this is something that I do on social media platforms. I try to enlighten the people because I've seen pain and I've seen misery, and I don't want for more people to suffer. And also I don't want for the Europeans to fall and the Americans to fall for these lies. This is why I do it. There is no hidden agendas, guys. So I'm independent 100%. And if you like to support my independent work, you can subscribe, like share this video, and also you can become a patron. Patron is patreon.com/Syriana Analysis. I just get like $2 per month from my subscribers, and it's a really great help for me to continue and stay independent in this jungle of, let's say, fake news outlets. Now I will show you another video of Christiane Amanpour, this time again with Lavrov. I'm showing you why she doesn't deserve to get an interview. This is what she asked Lavrov.
Russia had its own Pussy Riot moment. What do you think of Donald Trump's Pussy Riot moment?
Well, I don't know whether this would. English is not my mother tongue. I don't know whether I would be. I would sound. Decent. There are so many pussies around your presidential campaign on both sides that I prefer not to comment about this.
Oh my goodness. I wasn't expecting that.
I think this is his Armenian genes at play. You know that Lavrov's father is Armenian from Georgia, and he speaks Armenian. I think this is his Armenian genes, the funny side, the sarcasm. I mean, imagine you give an interview as a foreign minister of Russia or as the president of Russia in such circumstances, and she comes and asks you, what do you think about the Pussy Riot moment or some questions like that. No, we want really hard, tough questions. I hope that Tucker Carlson asked all the hard questions, grilled Putin with hard questions, but allowed him to answer and elaborate on the questions. I really hope. So let's see tomorrow, guys. It will be on Thursday, I think in the afternoon or something. We will see. I will be waiting and I will be watching that interview for sure. But because he dared to go to Russia and ask questions to Vladimir Putin, guys, this is now the Newsweek. Just before I jumped to this live streaming, they published this article. They say Tucker Carlson could face sanctions over Putin interview. Carlson's work in Russia could see the former Fox News host in hot water with the EU. Guy Verhofstadt, a former Belgian prime minister and current member of the European Parliament, told Newsweek. The lawmaker, who has called for the EU to explore imposing travel ban on Carlson, described Carlson as a mouthpiece of former President Donald Trump and Putin, adding, quote, "As Putin is a war criminal and the EU sanctions all who assist him in that effort, it seems logical that the External Action Service examine his case as well." The EU's External Action Service, EAS, is the bloc's diplomatic arm responsible for foreign policy. For an individual to be added to the EU's sanctions list, evidence must be presented to the EAS for review. If deemed sufficient, the EAS can then present the case to the European Council, the body made up of EU national leaders, which takes the final decision on whether to impose sanctions. As such, any hypothetical sanctions for Carlson may be some way off, even if the move has sufficient support among European lawmakers and heads of state. Luis Garicano, a former member of the European Parliament, told Newsweek he agreed with Verhofstadt's stance. He says, quote, "He is no longer a newsman, but a propagandist for the most heinous regime of European soil, and the one which is most dangerous to our peace and security," Garicano said of Carlson. This is crazy, guy. Like, if you disagree with someone, just call him a propagandist. He's no more a journalist. And I am not like saying I agree with Tucker Carlson 100%. I disagree with him with many, 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 many things. I'm not a right-wing person, right? But calling anyone who interviews Vladimir Putin now as a propagandist and not a journalist is just absurd. And says this is something that happened with me multiple times. That when they wanted to punish me here by the mainstream media for speaking my mind about what's happening in Syria, they say he's not a journalist, he's a propagandist. So the laws of free press and freedom of opinion doesn't apply to me, right? I just want to answer to Richard Law. Thank you first of all. Thank you so much, Richard, for your generous support. He says the sound levels on your video clips are too low. I think this is something that I cannot fix because this is the source of the video and I'm showing you from the source of the video, and I agree with you. I'm wearing headphones, but it's something that I cannot change. I mean, if you heard the first a question that when Amanpour gave the photo of Amran to Lavrov, I mean, there was a very clear sound technical problem in the video, but this is from the source. I cannot do anything. So you have to criticize CNN for the lack of professionalism in this regard. And American journalists, no, I mean American leaders like Biden, I said, like he's incapable of giving interviews like this long format to any foreign journalist, right? But at the same time, their politicians are coming under great scrutiny and under great criticism for supporting unconditional support of the Israeli onslaught against the Gaza Strip. And one of which is Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi, we know that her long-standing support for Israel and everything in the United States, but I'm very happy to see that people are facing them in the United States. And I think this is the way of embarrassing them and posting these videos on social media platforms and showing how hypocritical they are. And this is from the Code Pink. And this is Medea Benjamin. She today she says she refused to answer for her support for Israel as we talked to her ahead of the House vote on sending $17.6 billion more to support Israel's genocide in Gaza. I think, guys, if you see any American politicians in the US and you would like to embarrass him or her, I think this is the way of this woman. This is great. I will show you an example. So if you encountered any of them, you can copy what this woman is doing.
Don't call us Russian apologists or Chinese apologists. You are an Israel apologist. You are an Israel apologist.
Voting yes or no?
Are you going to vote no on the money? Are you going to vote no on the money? Are you going to vote no?
$1 million.
Are you going to vote no on the money?
Congratulations on making money on that.
We're not Russia's
sponsored.
We're not
from China.
We don't have headquarters in China. Our headquarters is right here in the United States. And we don't want you giving any more money to Israel.
Our bridges are crumbling.
San Francisco has so many problems. We need the money at home. Congresswoman, we need the money at home. Shame on you. Shame on you.
Money from people
Don't call us Russian apologists or Chinese apologists. You are an Israel apologist. You are an Israel apologist. You're an Israel apologist. Stop supporting genocide. Shame on you.
$1 million in NVIDIA stocks this week. She's making money off of it.
Yeah, I think this is the way, guys. If voting is not changing, if calls are not changing anything, I think this is the way to embarrass and show the hypocritical side of these politicians and their support for Israel while they shed crocodile tears about what's happening in Ukraine. And also, this is another news from McDonald's this time, and they say McDonald's sales dented by Israel-Gaza boycotts. The fast food chain reported its first quarterly sales miss in nearly 4 years due to weak growth in its international business division. Its boss previously acknowledged the impact of the conflict, blaming misinformation. Shares in McDonald's fell about 4% after the announcement. McDonald's is one of the several Western corporations, including Starbucks and Coca-Cola, that have seen boycotts and protests against them by anti-Israeli campaigners. The firm said that the Israel-Gaza conflict had meaningfully impacted performance in some overseas markets in the fourth quarter of 2023. Look, I'm not saying go and boycott these brands. I'm not saying do this and that. But to be honest with you, guys, do not eat from McDonald's. Who would eat from the McDonald's, right? And who would go and buy a coffee from Starbucks? I mean, these are really, really, really unhealthy food. So, like, for your own health, for the sake of your own health, you shouldn't eat from these brands and drink from these brands. Anyways, it's sorry to say, but it's shit food. And it's very, very harmful to your health. And it's very, very addictive. Very addictive. I would not step in McDonald's ever again. I have eaten in the past when I was living an unhealthy lifestyle and eating all this junk food, etc. And I felt very sad and very depressed and very unhealthy. I couldn't practice. I couldn't present live streamings like this. Guys, when I started my YouTube channel, if I post 1 or 2 times a week, that would have been a big achievement for me. Now I'm posting almost 6 times per week. So really, healthy lifestyle practices and healthy food is a game changer. This is just my brotherly advice to you guys. So speaking of Palestine, we have quick news in this regard. I'm just going to show you this news. This is a statement came from the foreign ministry of the Saudi Arabia, and it seems that they are completely now rejecting the offers of the Biden administration, and they are not going to strike any deal with Israel before the elections in the United States. And they say a statement from the Foreign Ministry Affairs regarding the discussion between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the United States on the Arab-Israeli peace process. I know that the letters are a little bit small here. Again, I cannot help you with that, but I will read it to you. They say the Ministry of Foreign Affairs stated that regarding the discussion between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the United States of America on the Arab-Israeli peace process, and in light of what has been attributed to the U.S. National Security spokesperson, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs affirms that the position of Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has always been steadfast on the Palestinian issue, and the necessity that the borderly Palestinian people obtain their legitimate rights. The kingdom has communicated its firm position to the U.S. administration that there will be no diplomatic relations with Israel unless an independent Palestinian state is recognized on the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital, and that the Israeli aggression on the Gaza Strip stops and all Israeli occupation forces withdraw from the Gaza Strip. The kingdom reiterates its call to the permanent members of the UN Security Council that have not yet recognized the Palestinian state to expedite the recognition of the Palestinian state on the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital, so that the Palestinian people can obtain their legitimate rights and so that a comprehensive and just peace is achieved for all. It's a remarkable statement, in my opinion, and it also plays in the hands of the bet that the Saudis have that they really dislike the Democrats, and they expect Donald Trump to come to power, and they think probably they could strike a deal under Trump or give such a service to Trump. I'm not sure about it, but I think it's very remarkable, such a statement. I know this is the position of Saudi Arabia and other Arabic countries anyways about the Arab-Israeli conflict, but to post such a statement now in this very sensitive, during such sensitive times when the Americans are trying to persuade the Saudis to sign a peace treaty with Israel, I think it's a big deal. I think it's a big deal, and I think such a also deal, if it happens, also helps Syria, because Syria has an occupied territories, the Golan Heights, by the Israelis. So 1967 borders means that Israel has to withdraw also from the Syrian occupied Golan Heights, and that's why I think the Syrians are giving so much importance nowadays in Damascus to their relations with Saudi Arabia. One, for investment reasons, and second, for restoring their Golan Heights. So, guys, this was all for today. I'm very happy to see all your comments here. There are like many of them. I hope you like this live streaming, and I really appreciate your presence with me and listening to my live streamings. We are over 600 people now watching this live streaming. I would really appreciate if you just hit the like button before you leave this live streaming. And if you like to support my independent work, you can become a patron. The link is scrolling on the screen, patreon.com/Syriana Analysis. And I will see you tomorrow, Thursday, 5 p.m. Central European times. I wish you peace. So peace be upon you guys, peace be upon your families, and we will see each other tomorrow. Salam.